I programmed myself to make a great video for you. I wonder if it's working. What do you think? What's all this talk about programming the subconscious mind in neuro-linguistic programming? Now, for some of you, that might sound scary, like I'm talking about brainwashing. And for some of you, that might sound really exciting, this idea that you could just sort of program yourself to do what you want to do, to succeed and accomplish whatever it is that you want. Now, before we dive into this, I just want to let you know that I will be doing a free training next week where we will take a deep dive into this and understanding what reprogramming your unconscious is, or your subconscious. And you will want to sign up for this right now. You'll find the link in the description below. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of this video. So first, let's talk about the origins of this idea of programming the subconscious mind. Where did this really come from, and why does NLP use this programming word? When NLP was being created in the early 1970s, this was when personal computers were really breaking out onto the scene. And NLP was created in Santa Cruz, California, where I live, where I'm at right now. And Santa Cruz is about 35 miles south of Silicon Valley. So as Silicon Valley was starting to blossom as far as the technology industry goes, and computer programming and software and everything to do with computers, people who were involved with NLP were sometimes very familiar with this, including Richard Bandler, one of the founders of NLP. And he liked to use programming type language. He liked computers a lot. He was a mathematician. And then you had John Grinder, who, if you've ever heard him speak, he almost sounds like a computer the way that he speaks. So he has this very digital way of talking. It was popular at the time, but it was more than that. I think it was also a realization that a computer is a product of its creator, human beings. And computers are built very much like their creators, because that's how we sort of understand the world around us. Now, I'm not going to go too far into this, but Steve Andreas has this whole theory on scope and category, how we select and collect experiences into categories, and that's how we make meaning of the world around us. Well, that's kind of, in a sense, what a computer does. And so when we're thinking about how computers are programmed, when computers function from their programming, well, people really function that way. The metaphor is very, very close to what we actually do. Now, a lot of your programming is unconscious, or what people refer to as the subconscious. Majority of what's going on in your mind and in your neurology, you're not consciously aware of. Your conscious awareness is only about maybe 20%. So, for example, you're not thinking about breathing until I just said something. So it was not even in your conscious awareness, but it was happening, and it takes mental functionings and programs to do that. There's involuntary programs that are running all the time. What's beating your heart, what blinks your eyes. And then when we can bring some of these things into our awareness, then we can change it, right? Which is really what NLP is about. The programming word is nothing to be afraid of. I think where people get really sort of afraid of it is when they think of it in hypnosis terms, which, a lot of NLP was modeled after hypnosis. They think of it as, well, if you talk to an NLP person, that person can reprogram you just by the words that they say without you even realizing it. They can reprogram your unconscious mind. Now, that does sound pretty scary to think that a person could just do that with language. Now, here's the thing. No one can make anyone do anything, right, if they don't want to. You can certainly influence people. You can certainly learn language patterns that will influence people both consciously and unconsciously. That's all. I've seen it. I've done it. I've experienced it. So that is all true, but you can't really make someone do something that they don't want to do. I've not been able to ever find anyone able to do that. I've even some of the top NLP people in the world, and even the father of modern hypnosis, Milton Erickson, even attempted it, and it never worked. So that's not something to really be afraid of. But what if you could go into all that programming, which you're mostly not aware of, which means it's really was created out of sort of haphazard programming. A lot of the programming is programming that was created when you were a kid, and you're still functioning off of that. So a lot of your programming is in desperate need of updating, but you don't know how to get at it, and you're sort of just functioning from it. And that's how most of us are living. And that's why probably majority of people are not truly fulfilled. Maybe they have some fulfillment in their life, but they're not like fully fulfilled, or they're not really exploring that because they don't really know how, and they don't know how to unplug the resistance that keeps getting in their way. When you think about things like self-sabotage or all the resistance to doing the things that you want to do, and you're not sure why, and you keep asking the question, well, I don't know what it is, but it just stops me. Or every time I get close to what it is that I want, I seem to push it away, or I seem to destroy it or sabotage it. That is old programming. That is old programming that's not connecting with the rest of you. And so how do we deal with this? Well, in NLP, it's basically a technology. What NLP is a technology of understanding how to get at these things, how to get into your unconscious and make these unconscious programs conscious again, so that you can have choice about it. You can say, okay, I understand why this thing has been holding me back. Now let me make those changes, and then you let it go. And it's even better when it slips back into unconsciousness, because then it becomes something that you're not negotiating anymore. It's not something like you're self-conscious about, like, oh, I need to be this way or that way. It's just the unconscious doing its thing, functioning how you want it to function, so that it serves you best, so that it's as useful as it can possibly be, and helping you achieve the fulfillment that you want. Now, you might be asking, well, okay, Damon, this sounds great. I understand the metaphor. I understand what you're talking about, how NLP works. How do I do it? Well, there are many, many different models. There are many different techniques and processes. I've done almost 700 videos, most of them on NLP processes and techniques. So it is really vast. That's just not something I can necessarily cover all in one video. This is also where NLP becomes a practice, and it becomes a lifelong practice, because you're always going to be running into resistance. You're always going to be functioning and acting in ways that you don't fully understand and that you want to change. And so you're going to want to make it a practice in your life to take NLP techniques, take NLP processes, and apply them to your unconscious. Bring them into conscious awareness, work on them, and then let them go back into unconsciousness. The idea behind this is that if you don't do that, then your programs are basically running you, the past experiences you've had and the programs you've built around that is really what most people are functioning on. Is probably what you're functioning on right now. And so in a sense, that program is running you. But when you understand this and you can bring it into consciousness, make some changes, let it go back into unconsciousness, now you're running the programs. Now you have choice about this. Actually, this is one of the main differences between hypnosis and NLP. I get that question a lot. What is the difference between NLP and hypnosis? There are several, but one of them is that hypnosis sort of trusts that the unconscious is holistic, and that it'll heal itself, and that it always wants healing. And I believe all that. And the idea behind hypnosis is to just kind of give some instructions to the unconscious and let it do its thing, and not try to interfere with it too much. That doesn't necessarily work very well for me. That might work well for a lot of people, but I want to be more precise about this. I want to know exactly what the parts are and the processes are, and I want to be very specific about the changes that I make. And this is just a personal choice. You might feel differently, but I find NLP incredibly useful, incredibly helpful in bringing it into consciousness and working at it at that level, and then letting it go back into unconsciousness. All that being said, you want to be very careful about the changes you make. I hear people saying, well, I want more power. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So if this person knows enough NLP processes to make that happen, then basically they know enough NLP processes to get themselves into trouble. Because when you say things like, well, I want more power, then that makes you feel like superior to other people. And that can create a real problem. There are other things like pride. There's other things like respect, where people want to experience these things. And of course, we all want to experience respect, but that's not something we control, because that comes from other people. So we can do things that are respectable and hope that other people respect us for it. But if we're waiting for that, and I've done a video on this too, if we're waiting for that, then that's not going to help us. That's going to make us more resentful. So you got to be careful what it is you change. And there is a lot that goes into NLP when you learn NLP, that hopefully, if you're learning it from the right place, they tell you these things. They tell you these things to watch out for. I was on a group coaching call, which I have for my members, and we were going through values elicitation, and people were saying some of their values, and I said, okay, you don't want to pursue that value. Let's change it up a little bit. And someone said, well, why are you invalidating all of our values? And I was like, no, I'm not invalidating your values. I'm saving you from traps. Some of these are big traps. Another one would be discipline. Some people come to me and they say, I want more self-discipline. And I'm not going to help a person do that. And the reason for that is because self-discipline, it implies that you're fighting yourself. It implies that you're in a fight with yourself and that you want to have enough discipline to beat that part of yourself, to bulldoze over it. And that is not the right way to go about this. It doesn't mean that it won't work sometimes. You might actually accomplish what it is that you want, but it will be very unfulfilling because only a part of you will be on board with that. When you need to fight yourself and fight resistance, that is not fulfillment. That is not happiness. It doesn't matter what you achieve. You're going to be unhappy about that. You want to find out what that other part wants, and you want to integrate those two parts. So be very, very careful about what it is that you do. Be careful when you start to learn this stuff. I see people in NLP, they get just good enough to create a lot of problems for themselves. You want to have a good mentor or a good teacher who can instruct you on these things so you don't go down a lot of wrong paths. We're all going to make mistakes. I'm not trying to say that, don't make any mistakes. You will make mistakes, and the more you practice, the more mistakes you will make. But there are some really bad mistakes that you can make that you might not realize what you're actually doing and how it might affect your life, and it could create a lot of problems. I talked to some of the people who were from the early days when NLP was being developed, and before it even had a name. Some of them still live here in Santa Cruz, and some of them would say, like, yeah, we all lost our jobs, we all lost our wives, we all lost all of our money or whatever it was, and then eventually recovered it all. But when you have this tremendous power in your hands, with it comes a lot of responsibility. So be very careful about when you go into your unconscious and start rewiring things. It can create a lot of problems if you don't really know what you're doing. Now, if you do actually want to find out more about what it means to reprogram yourself, this is what the free training that I'm doing next week is about. And I will also give you some of those pointers and those tips of, what is good changes that you can make and things to watch out for you so you don't make some of those mistakes that I was mentioning. If you want to get in on this training, there is a link down in the description right here down below. Click that link, reserve your spot, and make sure you do that as soon as possible because I'm sure the spots won't last. This is free, it is live, and it will be engaging. Like we'll be answering questions and I'll be interacting with you. So make sure you get in on that training. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit the bell so you'll be notified when I put new videos out, which tends to be on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And last but not least, if you can think of a friend or a family member who would benefit from watching this video, make sure you share it with them. Be a good friend. Take care.